Welcome to The Liminal. Tonight we delve into a tale that has haunted America's imagination for over half a century. A story of daring, disappearance, and a mystery so profound it remains the only unsolved hijacking in U.S. history. This is the legend of D.B. Cooper. On November 24, 1971, just as Thanksgiving Eve dawned, a man calling himself Dan Cooper boarded Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in Portland, Oregon. He was described as being in his mid-40s, wearing a business suit with a white shirt and a black clip-on tie. He paid $20 cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington. There were no security or identity checks on domestic flights in 1971, making it possible to board an airplane with a gun, a bomb, knives, or other weapons undetected. Cooper, a slim man in his mid-40s, wore mirrored sunglasses and was dressed like a typical businessman. He took his seat at the back of the plane. Shortly after takeoff, he summoned a flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, and handed her a note. Initially, she thought he was flirting, but his insistent gaze prompted her to read it. The note was chillingly clear. I have a bomb here and would like you to sit by me." To emphasize his seriousness, Cooper opened his briefcase, revealing a tangle of wires and what appeared to be explosives. He warned her that he would blow up the plane unless his demands were met. Cooper's demands were precise: $200,000 in cash, specifically in $20 bills, and 4 parachutes, 2 main back chutes, and 2 safety front chutes. The terrified flight attendant relayed the message to the cockpit. The pilot contacted air traffic control, and ultimately, they were instructed to follow Cooper's orders. Northwest Orient quickly agreed to the demands, and the FBI was alerted. The money, consisting of 10,000 $20 bills with pre-recorded serial numbers, was arranged by First Bank in Seattle. This ransom money alone weighed 23 pounds. Cooper remained remarkably calm throughout, sipping bourbon and chain-smoking Raleigh cigarettes. Florence Schaffner would later describe him as rather nice. Upon landing in Seattle, Cooper released all 36 passengers and 2 attendants in exchange for the ransom and parachutes. He then ordered the remaining flight crew to take off again, setting a course for Mexico City. However, the plane did not have enough fuel for such a long flight. Cooper consented to a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. He instructed the pilot to fly at a low altitude, around 10,000 feet, with the landing gear and flaps down, limiting the plane's speed to about 200 miles per hour. 2 Air Force jets shattered the plane, but they struggled to maintain such a low speed and had to circle around the hijacked aircraft. At approximately 8:24 p.m., while the plane was flying about 25 miles north of Portland, Cooper, alone in the cabin with the crew confined to the cockpit, donned one of the parachutes. He opened the plane's rear aft stairs and leapt into the night, carrying the $200,000 with him. He was never seen or heard from again. A media error in early reporting misidentified him as Buck D.B. Cooper, a name that became permanently etched in public memory. His actual alias was Dan Cooper. The FBI immediately launched an exhaustive investigation, spanning decades. They amassed a 398-page case file filled with hundreds of tips, false leads, and suspect profiles. Over the years, more than 1,000 suspects were investigated. One noteworthy tip described a suspect who used a wheelchair, but agents quickly ruled him out, noting that such a person couldn't have carried out the hijacking. Another significant name was Donald Sylvester Murphy, who, in 1972, perpetrated an elaborate hoax to extort $30,000 from a former Newsweek editor. Murphy altered currency to match the ransom serial numbers, and even dressed to resemble the hijacker's sketch. He was arrested and convicted of fraud. The FBI extensively documented this fraud scheme, including details of how Murphy and an accomplice, William John Lewis, attempted to sell Cooper's story and a confession. Speculation also long surrounded Richard McCoy Jr. Less than 5 months after Cooper's hijacking, McCoy carried out a similar crime, involving a parachute escape and ransom demand. He was captured 2 days later and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Despite the similarities, the FBI ruled McCory out of the Cooper case, citing mismatched physical descriptions and an alibi placing him in Utah. Years later, McCoy's children publicly claimed he was D.B. Cooper, even pointing to a parachute allegedly found in their mother's storage, but the FBI maintained its position. Other notable suspects included William Gossett, a military veteran obsessed with the case, and Kenneth Christensen, a former paratrooper and Northwest Orient employee, both without enough evidence to be confirmed. The FBI officially closed the Cooper investigation in 2016 due to a lack of new credible evidence. The newly declassified documents, while rich in detail and previously unseen tips, offered no breakthrough. Despite the exhaustive search efforts, including combing forests and farmlands for weeks, Dan Cooper had seemingly vanished. However, the mystery deepened in 1980, almost a decade after the hijacking, when a boy named Brian Ingram, while collecting firewood with his father on the banks of the Columbia River, uncovered 3 bundles of moldy $20 bills. The serial numbers matched those from the ransom money, confirming it was part of Cooper's haul.
This discovery, totaling $5,800, was significant, yet it confused the FBI. The money was found more than 20 miles from Cooper's estimated drop zone and in the opposite direction from where the wind was blowing. Geologists later determined the money was sitting above an area that had been dredged in 1974, suggesting the bundles arrived at least 3 years after the hijacking. This seemed implausible for money. Paleontologist Tom Kay, now a lead citizen scientist on the case, is convinced the money came out of the river and wasn't buried by human hands. He postulates that Cooper's body and the money might have become snagged on a ship's propellers in the Columbia River, moving upstream, with the violence ripping open the bag and spilling the money onto the shore. Kay's theory implies that Cooper likely died that night, with his semi-buoyant body moving downstream into the Columbia, eventually being sucked into the ocean. According to Kay, it's kind of like Bigfoot. You can come up with lots of evidence, but until you have a dead body, you really haven't. New scientific evidence has also been applied to old clues. Forensic analysis of Cooper's tie, which was left on the plane, revealed rare industrial metallics, suggesting he may have worked in aerospace or electronics. However, small particles of pollen found on the tie suggested it was worn in the spring, not in November when the jump occurred, a detail that complicates the timeline. The mystery has led to numerous attempts to recreate the jump and analyze Cooper's choices. Cooper, for instance, wore street clothes and did not bring specialized clothing for the night jump. He also failed to specify the denomination of the ransom money, resulting in him carrying 20 pounds of $20 bills, a significant extra weight for a jump. An experienced parachute packer from 1971 observed that Cooper chose an NB-8 parachute over a Pioneer Sport parachute, despite the NB-8 being uncomfortable and harder to open. This choice, combined with the poor visibility, freezing temperatures, and lack of goggles or gloves, made the jump incredibly risky for even an experienced parachutist. Many experts today believe he deployed his chute, but the harsh conditions likely proved fatal. Sound of a typewriter or old newspaper printing press, then fading. The impact of the D.B. Cooper incident reverberated far beyond the initial shock. It led to significant changes in the air travel industry, including the installation of peepholes in cockpit doors and the introduction of mandatory passenger and luggage screening at airports. Cooper's daring act, performed during the era of Vietnam and civil rights protests, generated a mood of distrust towards authority. He became a lasting legend, a symbol of rebellion against the system, and a modern-day pirate of the sky. Despite all efforts, D.B. Cooper's identity, fate, and the whereabouts of the rest of the ransom money continue to puzzle law enforcement and true crime enthusiasts alike. The question remains, did the gentleman thief survive? Or did he, as some believe, vanish into the depths of the Columbia River, becoming one with the enduring mystery he created? We may never know. What are your theories on the identity of D.B. Cooper? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unsolved mysteries.